Hey everybody, we're back for video number one, probably number one of two on the spinal cord. So our spinal cord, simply put, connects our brain to the rest of our body. So our periphery and our effectors, they're going to send sensory information up to the brain via the cord. The brain sends motor commands down to the periphery and the effectors via the cord. The cord is also going to be involved in integrating reflexes. So rapid, predictable, automatic responses to stimuli that we need to happen without even thinking about it. So we're going to integrate reflexes, send sensory signals up, send motor commands down. Those are my big functions of my spinal cord. Now, in this cross section of the spinal cord, we see some blue ascending tracts. These are clumps of white matter going up the spinal cord to the brain. I also see outlined in red some descending tracts. Those are going to carry motor commands down from the brain. So two big jobs: spinal cord, sensory information going up, carry motor information going down. All right, here we have a classic withdrawal reflex. You stab someone with a pin. Sensory neuron takes that information about the pain of the pin in. We process that information in this interneuron in our cord. Interneuron tells the motor neuron to tell the muscle to withdraw that body part that got poked. That is the withdrawal reflex. Integrating it, causing it to occur, is a job of the spinal cord. So the spinal cord is going to integrate information. It's going to process information and then execute a command. And that's a reflex. So our spinal cord does reflexes. All right, we're going to get to the anatomy of the spinal cord in a moment, but first we're going to talk about its protection. And just like the brain, there are three layers of protection. There's bone, meninges, and then cerebrospinal fluid. So there are 20 vertebrae that are going to protect the spinal cord. 7 cervicals, 12 thoracics, and 1 lumbars. 1 lumbar. And now this is because the spinal cord, it actually stops at L1. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But the spinal cord stops at L1 at your first lumbar vertebra. So we got 20 vertebrae protecting it. 7 cervicals, 12 thoracics, and the first lumbar. We see the spinal cord safely ensconced within its ring of bone. We got the body of the vertebra, then we got the vertebral arch going around it. Now, of course, the vertebrae are not fused to each other, which is going to make it a tiny bit less protective, but allow for that spinal movement that's so crucial to all sorts of activities and daily life. All right, here we see our meninges. There are a trio of meninges, of course. 3 of these membranes. The outermost one, red arrow, is the dura mater. Then deep to the dura mater, this whitish line, blue arrow, is the arachnoid mater. And then finally on the cord itself, purple arrow, is the pia mater. So those are my 3 meningeal membranes that are protecting my spinal cord. Now, the dura mater is the outermost of my meninges. So it's my outermost meninx. Note the singular of meninges is meninx. And my dura mater is made of good old, dense, irregular connective tissue, lots of collagen, making it tough and strong. Now, one of the things we learned about the dura mater for the brain was that it had a double layer. In the brain, there was a periosteal and a meningeal dura mater. Not so for the spinal cord. Spinal cord just has a single dura layer. Now, before we keep going towards the cord, let's go out for a second. This gray guy right here is my dura mater. And I see him posteriorly, laterally, and anteriorly here. And then superficial to the dura mater, there is a space. And I see this yellow stuff in it. The space here is the epidural space. And the yellow stuff, of course, is adipose tissue. I would also find blood vessels and nerve roots in this space, but I'm really interested in the adipose tissue because what is its job? Shock absorption and cushioning. So we also surround our spinal cord with a layer of fat for additional protection and cushioning. All right, let's jump down to the arachnoid matter. That's our middle meninx, made of a more loose connective tissue. Look at how the fibers of the arachnoid matter extend inward to the pia mater, and these fibers crisscross in a spider web-ish appearance, and that is why we use the word arachnoid, spider-like. Matter, of course, means mother. We talked about that in our brain lecture, I do believe. So, underneath my arachnoid matter, deep to it, there is a space called the subarachnoid space, and it is occupied by good old CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, onward, we got our innermost meninx, that's the pia mater. The word pia means gentle, and this is a very delicate, very loose connective tissue. And it's going to follow the spinal cord. It's going to go in on this fissure here and then come back out, just like it did with gyri and sulci in the brain. All right, we got some histology of our meninges, which unfortunately we did not do in the laboratory, and that's disappointing to me, and I'm sure disappointing to you. Here's some spinal cord white matter over here. Then this is the pia mater, nice and skinny. This is the pia mater. Then we can see the arachnoid matter, a little bigger than the pia, but still very skinny. Then the dura mater is super thick out here. And the stain they used in this particular slide is different than the one we're used to. In this one, the collagen is going to be stained blue, and that's why the dura is so blue, because it is so rich in collagen. Do notice we see a dorsal root and a ventral root here as well. Okay, cerebrospinal fluid. We know we make it at our four choroid plexuses, and we have a choroid plexus in each of the four ventricles. I see my third ventricle here. I see my fourth ventricle here. I see the pink things. Those are two choroid plexuses. And of course, I would have choroid plexuses in my lateral ventricles as well. Now, CSF is made in all these ventricles, flows between them, eventually ending up down here in the fourth ventricle. CSF leaves the fourth ventricle, sneaks out the median aperture in the back and some lateral apertures on the sides, and gets into this subarachnoid space. So the light blue area now is the subarachnoid space, and that's where the CSF is going to be found, providing shock absorption and cushioning. And we talked about how ependymal cells use their cilia to sweep the CSF. And we talked about how CSF is reabsorbed into a dural venous sinus via these little bumps right here. This is called an arachnoid villus. So we hit that stuff back in our brain discussion. Go ahead and go back to that and rewatch that video if you need to. And now we're done with our protective things. We are now going to cover the spinal cord itself. Extends from the foramen magnum all the way down to L1. So it's not as long as your vertebral column. It's shorter. Ends at the level of L1. Interesting. Now, in that spinal cord, we actually divide it up into 31 separate spinal segments. Each segment has a pair of nerves coming out of it. Each segment has a pair of nerves coming out of it. Each pair of nerves goes to a particular part of the body. Note that we've got a total of 8 cervical nerve pairs and 8 cervical spinal segments. We've got 12 thoracic nerve pairs and 12 spinal segments in the thoracic division, then 5 lumbar spinal segments and 5 lumbar spinal nerve pairs, 5 sacral segments and 5 sacral nerve pairs, and then finally just a single solitary coccygeal nerve segment and coccygeal nerve pair. All right, so 31 segments, 31 pairs of spinal nerves, corresponding to different regions of the body. And in fact, if we slice up the body, we can see the different parts of the skin that are going to send sensory signals to specific spinal cord regions. So looking at this body here, like I got all these different chunks and they're labeled, T8, T9, T10, T11, T12, S2, S3, L1, L2, L3, etc. So these labels refer to the spinal nerve pair that's getting the sensory information from these different parts of the body. Now wait a minute, there are 30 of these segments, but I just said there were 31 parts of the cord. And that is because C1 does not get one of these body chunks. C1 often does not have a sensory root. C1 innervates the meninges in like the back of your cranial cavity. So there is no skin section corresponding to your C1 cord or your C1 nerve pair. And by the way, these divisions of the body are known as dermatomes. Tome means cut, like slice, like in the word anatomy. The word anatomy literally meant cut apart. Derma means skins. These are skin slices. And that makes sense. I like that etymology there. That's good. Okay, let's not mess around. Let's keep going. There are two thickenings of the spinal cord. There is a cervical enlargement. There it is right there. And then there is a lumbar enlargement. These enlargements mean we have more neurons in these spots. And we have more neurons in these spots because these are spots that are innervating our limbs. And think about the degree of sensation and the degree of motor control that we have in our upper and lower limbs. All right, spinal cord is coming down. It tapers and ends at L1. The tapered region, the narrow cone-shaped region, is called the conus medullaris. It means cone on the inside, and sounds better in the Latin here, conus medullaris, than cone on the inside. We're going to find our sacral cord as well as our coccygeal cord in that conus medullaris. Now, inferior to the conus medullaris, we have a bundle of spinal nerves running vertically. These are most of my lumbar nerves, all my sacrals, and my coccygeal nerve. So because the spinal cord ends at L1, nerve pair for L2 and L3 and L4 and L5 and so on have to go down and then out, down and then out, down and out. And the down parts of all these nerves create this collection, this bundle here, which is called the cauda equina. Literally means the tail of the horse. Because in a gross dissection, it does kind of look like a big horse's tail. All right, fantastic. Here we see our different regions. We got our cervical region with its enlargement, 8 segments, 8 nerve pairs. We got our thoracic region with its nerve segment, its spinal cord segments and nerve pairs. And then we got our lumbar and our sacral and our coccygeal parts. Then finally, we see our cauda equina coming down. Now, if we look at this spinal cord, I kind of like this picture. It's pretty cool. Here's the spinal cord right here, and it's coming down, 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 down. Look at that cervical enlargement. Look at that lumbar enlargement. Look at that conus medullaris. Now, in this picture, the green thing is this string of pia mater called the filum terminale. It is going to connect the conus medullaris to the posterior coccyx, providing an inferior anchor for the cord. Okay, fantastic. If we look at the cross-sectional view here, we see the anterior median fissure, as well as the posterior median sulcus. Remember, of course, a sulcus is a shallow groove, and a fissure is a deeper groove. I can't remember how many slides I've got in this. Well, I could look right here. We're on slide 22, and there's a grand total of 62. So we're not quite halfway done. Let's try and get halfway done here. All right. If I look at my cord, I got an external superficial white matter made of myelinated axons, and then a butterfly of gray matter where I find my somata, dendrites, and unmyelinated axons. Now, my white matter is divided up into columns. There are columns in the back, columns on the side, and columns in the front. Another word for columns is funiculi. The word funiculus literally means cable. That's what I want to say, unless my memory is failing me. I'm not going to test you on that etymology, but I do like to know it. So you can say columns, or you can say funiculi, posterior, lateral, anterior columns, or funiculi. All right. Here I see my funiculi in the back, my funiculi in the side, and my funiculi in the front in my white matter of my cord. And of course the yellow part is going to be my gray matter with the butterfly shape. Fantastic. So my gray matter has the two wings of the butterfly with a body in between. And that connecting rectangle between the two wings is called the gray commissure. The word commissure means a joining. And in the middle of the gray commissure, we've got the central canal, that tube right there, which is going to contain CSF. If we go up, we're going to run into the fourth ventricle. The central canal connects to the fourth ventricle. On each butterfly wing, I am always going to have a dorsal horn, always going to have a ventral horn, and I will sometimes have a lateral horn as well. Let's talk about what those horns are and what those horns do. My dorsal horn is where sensory axons are coming in. So sensory axons are coming in my dorsal horn. Notice we have a pair of unipolar sensory neurons here, blue and green. Notice that the blue one is labeled as being a somatic sensory neuron. So think about things like touch and proprioception. Whereas the green one is a visceral sensory neuron. Think about it coming from internal organs, perhaps, which is what the word visceral refers to. So, of course, also remember that this class emotionally, I thought I was drawing, but I was not drawing yet. There we go. This class emotionally makes you feel sad, especially the spinal cord, because the sensory neurons, we describe them with two A words. Sensory neurons are afferent, and the sensory neurons are going to be dorsal. So this class makes us feel sad. All right, on that note, let's talk about the other horns. So I have my lateral horn here, and I've got my ventral horn here. Both the lateral and the ventral horns are going to contain the somata of motor neurons. So I see these little yellow and red circles representing motor neuron somata, and then their axons are exiting down here. Now the difference is my ventral horn contains somatic motor neuron somata. Somatic means body, and so these motor neurons are controlling skeletal muscles. While my lateral horn contains visceral or autonomic motor neuron somata. So we're talking about neurons that are going towards things like cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands. Okay, fantastic. So we know the dorsal horn is where sensory axons are going in. And we actually see several small bundles of sensory axons. These small bundles are called dorsal rootlets. Now my dorsal rootlets branched from a larger bundle called a dorsal root. And because these are sensory neurons in the dorsal root, so the sensory axon is in here, and then it keeps going, and we pass the cell body right here, and then the sensory axon keeps going in. So it is a unipolar neuron. And look where I drew the cell body. In this wide part right here. This wide part right here is a collection of sensory neuron cell bodies. And such a collection is known as a dorsal root ganglion. Excellent. So I also see ventral rootlets. So I had dorsal rootlets in the back. I got ventral rootlets in the front. And ventral rootlets are going to contain motor axons, leaving the ventral and lateral horns. Ventral rootlets fuse together to make a ventral root. There's my ventral root right there. Notice there is no ventral root ganglion because the cell bodies are up here in the ventral horn and the lateral horn. So there's no thick part for a cell body because the cell bodies are up here. So I got my ventral root there. Ventral root, of course, is motor. Dorsal root, of course, is sensory. And those two roots are going to fuse, basically right where we leave the spinal column. And once the dorsal and ventral roots have fused, we now have a spinal nerve. And a spinal nerve is a mixed nerve. So remember, dorsal root was sensory, ventral root was motor. So when those two fuse together, we got both varieties of signals in this nerve. So it is considered to be a mixed nerve. We'll do a couple more things, then we'll quit for spinal cord 1. So here is my spinal nerve. And of course, I'm going to have 31 pairs of these. Don't forget that. Coming from 31 segments, like this is one segment that we were looking at here. So my spinal nerve is quickly going to branch, giving me a front branch and a back branch. Translate front branch, and you get ventral ramus. Ventral means front, ramus means branch. So that's my ventral ramus, and this is my back branch, which of course is then my dorsal ramus. So my spinal nerve branches into a ventral and a dorsal ramus. Of course, I had 31 pairs of spinal nerves, right? So I'm going to have 31 dorsal rami and 31 pairs, rather, of dorsal rami and 31 pairs of ventral rami. Now the dorsal ramus, which we see with the arrow on it over here, but same thing right here, same thing down here, over here. The dorsal ramus carries motor and sensory signals to and from the posterior trunk. So basically, it's like it's going to your back. You can think of it simply as such. The ventral ramus, on the other hand, which we see one right here, and we see some branches coming off of it almost immediately, then it continues this way. These are all ventral rami, these two guys over here, this guy right here. Ventral rami carry motor and sensory signals for the anterior trunk and also importantly for the limbs. So check out this picture right here. I know we did this in class, so I'm not going to do it in the video here for you, but you should pause this and find all 5 of these things on this picture. So go ahead and pause the video and find all 5 of those things. As always, let me know if you get stuck. Does anybody ever get stuck? Because I always say, let me know if you get stuck. Let me know if you have questions. And nobody ever seems to get stuck. I will take that as a good sign. All right. We had our dorsal root, sensory, our ventral root, motor, spinal nerve, mixed, spinal nerve branching and giving me a dorsal ramus, also mixed, and a ventral ramus, also mixed. Now, my ventral ramus very quickly gives off these 2 branches right here. I got blue arrows on them right here. These 2 branches are called rami communicantes. Rami is just the plural of ramus. Communicantes means communicating or connecting. And so these 2 branches are going to connect my ventral ramus With this guy here, this collection of axons and cell bodies in here, and this is called my sympathetic trunk. Later, we're going to do the autonomic nervous system, and so we're going to deal with this later. We're just meeting these rami communicantes right now. All right, we are more than halfway done. We got 39 out of 62 done, which is amazing. So I am going to stop on this slide, not even going to do this slide. Done spinal cord video number 1. I had fun making it. I'm positive you're having fun listening to it, of course. Why wouldn't you, right? Anyhow, I'll see you later. Bye.